Dr. Jennifer Wisdom, I've known her for about, 5, 6, 7 years. And it shouldn't have been that long, actually. It's a shame. But Dr. Jennifer Wisdom holds a PhD and a master's in public health, and has been working for over 25 plus years in the industry, helping people who are curious and motivated to bring power to their work, to feel successful and to feel empowered in their everyday work lives and in their personal lives. She's done this by giving talks and helping professionals and organizations all over the world, in Brazil, in Kenya, South Africa, and of course across the United States as well. And I think I can stop talking a little bit and let you talk a little bit about yourself and how you found yourself at Google today.
Sure. It's been quite a journey to get here. My parents didn't finish college. Most of my grandparents didn't finish high school. And when it was time for me, I knew I wanted to go to college. I knew I wanted to move ahead, but my family didn't have money. So I joined the military. I served as a photojournalist in the Army for 4 years, which was a crazy, fantastic, stressful, bizarre experience. And then afterwards, I used my GI Bill to get a PhD in clinical psychology and become a psychologist. And I've worked in academia for about 25 years and am now independent. But you can't ever fully escape academia. So I still have my fingers in some things there. But over time, really finding, one, how challenging it was for someone who didn't have a family culture of college or grad school or academia. And then two, to see how many other people also, whether they had a family history of college or grad school or not, also had trouble navigating both school and the workplace. And so starting with when I was younger and was working with young people, and now I am slightly less younger, working with people younger than me, and really, really wanting to give back. It's really important to lift as you climb and to help move people forward. And I kept getting the same questions over and over around, how do I be successful at work? How do I earn respect? How do I deal with that colleague who keeps taking credit for my work? How do I deal with a boss that doesn't mentor me? And just decided to put it all out there.
Awesome. And so speaking of putting it all out there, she did this by writing this amazing book. It's called Millennials Guide to Work. And I had the fortunate opportunity of reading it several times. And what I love about this book, and you all will find out for yourselves, for those who got here early, got a copy. For those who didn't get here early, there are some texts in your chairs, how to get a free snippet of the book. But what's amazing about this book is that it's not a cover to cover book.
Right.
And it's actually like a reference text. So it's kind of like if you've ever gone foraging in the woods for something and you have a reference text, you literally can go to a page based on whatever problem you're having at work and find the solutions to that specific problem without having to read the whole thing. But we'll back up a second because you mentioned academia, and that's actually how we met when you were a VP, right?
Associate
Vice President at GW, George Washington University in DC. And the way we met is I was in HR. And so we got a lot of the dirty, unfortunate, unfun things that were happening to both your colleagues, to your employees, and to yourself. So can you tell us a little bit more about some of the difficult situations that maybe you faced at GW or, Anonymous University?
Sure. I'll tell some Anonymous University stories.
Sure.
So right after starting a position, I found out that there was a staff member who was on FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, with an intermittent FMLA, which meant that when she wasn't feeling well, she could choose to not come into work. I'm a big fan of FMLA. It turns out when she was not well and choosing not to come into our employer, she was going to her other employer, that's considered insurance fraud. So that's not allowed. So unfortunately, HR at the time, you weren't there for this one, but HR at the time said, well, that doesn't seem like too big of a problem and you don't have any proof. But the staff were getting very upset and this was a big problem. So then I was stuck with managing this person's situation, the staff around this person, because every time she didn't show up, they were upset, wanting to balance keeping, support for FMLA, acknowledging someone appears to be misusing FMLA. I don't have all the information. And then how do I help her supervisor deal with the situation?
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah. So I guess from a difficult situations at work perspective, I think our issue as like maybe millennials is that we're expected to be professionals, like out of the womb, and like know how to navigate like work and do professional things like interview, like do a resume, like manage something on the job that we've never done before.
Just know all of it.
Just know all of it.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how you don't always have to maybe just be expected to know what you do?
Nobody knew all of it. So any Gen Xer or baby boomer who is expecting that you know everything on your first day, there's some serious denial going on. Because I'm a Gen Xer. I didn't know everything my first day for sure. And it just takes time to learn different things. I mean, you have your own experiences in your family, in your school, maybe in college, maybe in grad school, maybe in your community, about your sense of how things work, how people communicate, whether people say what they mean and mean what they say or not, whether things are solid, whether they're not solid, what happens behind the scenes. We all have our own sense of those things. And each workplace is different. Some workplaces are highly competitive. Some workplaces are really casual. Some appear casual, but are really competitive. Everything's not always as it seems. And it takes anybody, no matter when you grew up, it takes anybody a while to figure those things out. And it's often challenging because you may or may not be lucky enough to have a guide, to have a mentor, or someone who can help you. And because someone's your supervisor does not mean they will be your mentor. I mean, ideally, of course, they'll mentor you and help you and guide you and do all of those things. But in reality, we all know that not all supervisors choose to mentor their staff, and they may just stick to the work and let you move forward however you move forward.
So finding a mentor can be hard sometimes. Like, I'm an introvert. It's hard for me to reach out to people that way sometimes. And in your book, one of the biggest things that you talk about, I think, and you consistently, repeatedly talk about, is knowing when to reach out to a professional coach. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about how do you go about actually obtaining a mentor, whether it's your supervisor or not, or a coach?
Sure. So there's a lot to unpack there. So first is finding a mentor. I think the most important thing to know about finding a mentor is typically most people don't have one mentor. And I think of this from a school perspective. You might have someone who's a faculty member who's a cheerleader. You might have a mentor who's a cheerleader for you and just helps pick you up when you're down. Someone who helps you understand process or politics. Someone who helps you understand content or the technical stuff that you're working on. And maybe somebody that's just there to kind of shake you and say, stop feeling sorry for yourself and get moving. You know, those are often in different people. It's very rare. I've never found all of those people in one. And of course, there are other different perspectives that could be helpful too. So the first step is not expecting all of that from one person, and to be able to accept kind of casual, informal mentoring as it comes. Sometimes I consider it mentoring if I have a conversation with someone and they provide some information that's helpful or provide some guidance, even if I never see them again. That was great. That was wonderful. I'll take it. I'm not going to hold out for the one perfect person that will be my parents and everything all at once, because that's not going to happen. As far as finding a mentor, a lot of times it just starts with a conversation. Mentors are people too. People who want to help will become clear because they're the people who are offering suggestions. Maybe they're offering unsolicited advice. And then you can go to them and say, hey, I have some questions for you. Can I ask you? I think there had been a time where people talked about, this person is my mentor. And certainly if you have a famous person as your mentor, something like that, go for it. But for most people, it's just more casual. Like, we're just going to talk. If I have questions about, when I have questions about HR, I can call up Takia and she can mentor me. I consider it mentoring or a consultation if she talks to me about it. And when she has questions about stuff I do, I provide that too. So that's there. Sometimes you might want to get an external coach, which is what Takia was asking about as well. So the signs that you might need a coach are, one, if you're feeling kind of lost and you're not really sure where you're going, and you might want someone else to help you think through your kind of career strategy total. And maybe that's not something you want to share with people you work with, or maybe that would be appropriate for a mentor that you have that's outside your workplace. but those kinds of meta questions can sometimes be good for a coach. Another is if you have a specific issue that maybe you want to improve on or that you've been given feedback on. So maybe there's concern about your time management or concern about your the way you handle yourself in meetings. That might be a place to have a coach who can just give you just someone who's there for you. They don't have any other agenda. They're not thinking all politics of everybody else. They're just there to help you with whatever that issue is. So those things can be helpful.
Yeah. How do you find a coach?
Great question. So you can Google it. You can Google professional coaches, career coach, executive coach. All of those are ways that you can find coaches. There are also several organizations. The American Psychological Association has consulting psychologists. I'm a member of that organization. There's the International Coaching Federation. It's important to know that there's not a standard certification for coaches, so you'll need to do your homework about the person and ask questions. So you're going to want to ask what their fees are, what their process is. Some coaches want to run you through a whole official, expensive assessment process before they work with you. So if that's something you're into, that's great. And if it's not something you want to do, you don't have to do that. There are plenty of coaches that will meet with you just weekly or however often you need it. Most times coaches will have a package, so they'll want you to commit to 5 sessions, and they'll want a lot from you. So they're not there to do it for you. They're going to ask you a lot of questions. So if one of your challenges is, it's hard for me when someone confronts me on stuff, then let your coach know, because then they can work with you on that too. That would be helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if you could give like 3 to 4 pieces of advice in terms of like, these are the things that every person should know, or in this case, every millennial should know when going into the workplace, what would they be?
I have my favorites. So number 1 favorite, most important thing, be brave enough to have difficult conversations. Get better at having difficult conversations. I had these colleagues, these staff once, where a caller, Allison, came to me and said, I've been in this meeting with Sarah. I want to talk to you about Sarah. She keeps pushing really hard. I don't know why she's pushing so hard in the meeting, and she's always on my case. And, I think we just need to do X, Y, Z. I don't understand why she's being so hard. And I said, did you maybe talk to her about it? Oh, no, she'll get mad at me. I don't want to do that. So we talked a little about maybe she can talk to her about it. So then a couple days later, Sarah, the other person, came in and said, can I talk to you about Allison? She's really seems like she's too laid back in this meeting and she's not stepping up. And really, I think what we need to do is X, Y, Z, the exact same thing. So I had the same idea of what to do. So I thought, maybe you could talk to her. Oh, I don't want to hurt her feelings. I don't want to get her upset at me. So I talked with her and I suggested in my wisdom, which I actually knew the answer, maybe you have more in common than you think, which they did. So a couple of weeks passed and Allison, the more junior one, came back to me and said, I did it. I talked with her. We're on the same page. It's so good. And I said, what was it like? And she said, it was really scary. It was hard to bring that up. Sarah's more senior than me, and I didn't want to sound like I was whining, but I'm really glad I did it. So that happens all the time, all the time. So being brave enough to have that conversation, have the difficult conversations is really important. And some things you can say that make those conversations better, things like, thanks so much for being willing to work this through with me, or I'm sure we can find a solution to this together. You notice how that's attributing positive intent to the other person, whether you feel it or not. Just say it. It's fine. They'll step up to the plate when you say things like that. So that's really good. Brave enough to have difficult conversations. Second one is build networks. How many of you have been suggested, it's been suggested to you to build a network? Yeah. How many of you know why? Yeah. So the person sitting next to you could be your boss in 5 years. The person sitting next to you could be your employee in 5 years. They could be the mayor in 10 years. You never know. You never know where your lives are going to take you. So it's generally a good idea to build that network now. And by building that network, that means getting to know people, staying on neutral to positive terms. It doesn't mean you have to buddy up to jerks. I'm not saying that. But try to keep positive relationships with people. Take an interest in what they do. And easy things you can do to build a network is just to talk to people. How did you get to Google? How did you get started in what you were doing. What are you interested in doing in 5 years? Or can I tell you about a neat project I'm working on? Any of those kinds of things will help you build that. My favorite networking story, my first faculty position, I was asked to take over a project which immediately got audited by a federal contractor. I was not signing up for this. That's not what I signed up for. And I'm not a finance person. So I had to slog through this audit with this woman named Lynette, who was from the official university group. And she and I slogged through this for months, and it was just really painful. So time moved on. I left. I went to Columbia University in New York. A few years later, a friend of mine emailed me and said, "Hey, did you hear Lynette moved to Columbia?" And I said, "Oh, let me reach out to her." So I did. We had lunch. She said, "How's faculty going?" And I said, I'm starting to get interested in research administration. Just, I keep remembering that audit we did. And even though it was painful, I'm still interested. I'm interested in how all these different parts move together at a level higher than the university. And she said, "Have I got the opportunity for you?" She invited me to be the faculty representative for Columbia University to this group called the Federal Demonstration Partnership. That is all of the federal funders, so NIH, NSF, NASA, Department of Ed, and faculty and admin reps from all of our universities. Nerd heaven for me. This was amazing. And we ended up working together at that group and making some positive changes and doing some wonderful things for several years. And even though we've both moved on from Columbia, we're still good friends. And I stayed involved with the group at GW, stayed involved there. And it was just amazing. And it was just this person I happened to work with on this quite unpleasant project 5 years prior. So building that network's really, really important. Third, manage up. Manage your boss. So management is usually considered the senior person tells the junior person what to do, and you figure it out and you do it. So managing your boss doesn't mean you're telling your boss what to do, but it does mean you're figuring out how to work with your boss. So find out what your boss wants. What's your boss's priorities? How does that person like to receive information? What are the things that really, really bug them? Don't do those things, right? So then you can help give information to your boss and share products and performance with your boss in a way that makes sense. And one of my examples from this is someone that Takia knows, where started a new job. I'm ready. I come in with my agenda with 10 items on it and then all my supporting documents. And I say, "I'm ready to start our first meeting." And he picks my agenda that I I took like an hour putting this thing together. He picks it up like I just put a diaper on his desk. And he's like, "I'm not reading this." Yeah. I thought, okay, great. I just started. How's this going to go? And he said, 3 things I need to know, 1 question. Go. And that is how he liked to receive information. Now, whether that's the right way or the wrong way, it's the wrong way, right? That's not a good way. It's not a good way to supervise people. But that was very helpful for me. So I took all my stuff, whittled it down every week to 3 things to let him know about and 1 question to ask him for advice on. And that's how we move forward. And that was enormously helpful. And so that's that.
I will say, and you have like another one, I think. Did you have another one?
I do have one more.
I will say that is super relevant for us right now. Perf is coming up, as you all know, and it is so important to be able to talk about your accomplishments and talk about them in a way that your manager and your skip level managers can receive. So really hear people and listen to your managers when they're giving you feedback on how to give them feedback about yourself. And I think that's really in the same vein about what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that may be related to my final one, which is know when it's time to move on. And I don't mean moving on from Google. Thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate that. But it may be that you're in a team where things are really comfortable and it's time to move on and challenge yourself some more, or it's time to move on from a boss that's really not supporting you as much as you'd like, or that is not giving you the opportunities that you'd like, or the connections that would help you grow. And you can stay in the comfort zone, absolutely. But if you did, you probably wouldn't be working here, right? You've got a lot that you want to learn and grow and offer to the world. You're smart, you're ambitious. There's all those things you can do. So knowing when it's time to move on is important. And I think the most important part of that is knowing when it's time to move on from a conception of yourself that is no longer accurate. So if you see yourself forever as the newbie, that's not going to serve you well. You're allowed to be the newbie at first, but you got to move on from that at some point, because people will see you that way too if you see yourself that way, and that doesn't serve you well. So an example from a mentor, I had done the PhD, I did a 2-year postdoc, and then I got this important career development award. It was a real honor, it's a big thing, but it's still technically a training award. So about halfway through that, I was talking to a mentor who said, like I was talking about what next steps might be. He said, at some point, you've got to stop being promising and start delivering. And I thought, oh, okay, awkward moment. That's okay. I can have this difficult conversation. But it was a moment that made me think, yeah, I'm stuck in trainee mode. I'm still seeing myself as a trainee when I've got this enormous amount of experience and education and the postdoc and everything else. And even though this award is officially a training award, it's for career development. And I need to stop seeing myself that way. And when I started seeing myself as a professional, as someone who deserved to stand in this position and to stand in my own power as faculty member, then I was able to really make a lot more change. And people treated me differently over time. So
because you treat yourself differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So knowing when it's time to move on from whatever might not be serving you is important too.
So how do you know? Because I think a lot of times we get told, like, build your network, know when it's time to move on, have difficult conversations, but we don't get the how, like the actual ABC, this is how you do it. So how do you know when you're in that position, whether it's being new to professional or time to transition to a different job or a different organization? How do you know when it's time?
So there's no simple answer. It's not like if you do these 3 steps, you'll know it's time. But a few things you can consider. One is how long you've been in a position. So assuming you are all reasonably competent people, once you've been there, which I think is a safe assumption here, once you've been in a position for at least for a year, probably for many of you for 6 months, you know what you're doing. You're no longer the newbie. You might officially be the most junior person on the staff or the most recent to arrive, but you can stop thinking of yourself as a newbie after 6 to 12 months when you generally know what's going on. So that's one part. Second is when your title changes, for sure. If you move from being assistant something to something, or even assistant something to associate something, that's a step up and that's a sign. You can start looking at yourself differently. And then finally, I would say when you choose to. So if you decide what your goals are, then you can just change how you see yourself immediately. You don't need any approval from anyone else. So instead of seeing yourself as a graduate student or as a trainee or as somebody who's new to your career, you can see yourself as someone who is on their way to a management position, or someone who is on their way to starting their own company or doing amazing things that are going to open up everything else. I mean, you could choose to see yourself as kind of at the end of the road you've been on, or at the beginning of the road that's ahead of you. And that's a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I have a few more minutes before we open it up for questions. I actually want to talk about the book because you did that.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about how you did that and why you did that?
Sure.
Write a book.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I've spent a lot of time talking with young people. At first, when I was that age, and now everybody stays the same age. Thank you. I appreciate that. Everyone else gets older, but not
me.
No. So talking with folks, and the same kinds of challenges kept coming up. So one was a basic work skills. And the structure of the book is basic work skills first, including how to find a mentor and a coach and set goals and network. There's a section on how to deal with yourself. This is often this comes up all the time, where you don't feel motivated, you're bored at work, you don't know what your next steps are, you feel like an imposter. I'm sure that's never happened to anyone here.
Google
happens to me a lot,
syndrome?
including right now. So you get better at dealing with it. I don't know if it ever completely goes away, but you definitely get better at dealing with it. So dealing with yourself, dealing with colleagues. Colleagues are gossipy, or colleagues are doing things that drive you crazy, or they're taking credit for your work or whatever. And then dealing with your boss. So a boss who doesn't mentor, a boss who yells. I've had some terrible bosses. I've had some great bosses. And just different ways to deal with bosses. So I put those things together and then started going through my list of every horror story I've ever heard from everyone, everything I've experienced, right? And then started talking to colleagues who've worked in this area, including you and a number of others, around what is most helpful. And then making sure to address issues that are unique for millennials, such as the importance of earning respect at work and managing social media at work. For some reason, everyone over 40 thinks all you do is stay on your phones all the time. I don't understand that either.
It's only like 75% true.
There you go. So, and part of what was so important to me is that I'm always a fan of the underdogs. And it would drive me crazy when people would talk about millennials. You're always on your phone, you're doing this, you're entitled, and you don't know anything. And, you know, when I was coming, let me back up. When my mother, who's a baby boomer, was a teenager, her family got their first color TV. And she talked about how everyone said it was going to rot their brains, which may or may not have happened. And then, and if there's any other Gen Xers in the room, the advent of the Walkman, we're all going to like walk into the street and kill ourselves because we're paying attention to the Walkman and music. This has been, every generation has its stuff, every generation. I don't know why there seems to be some sort of block on understanding the millennial generation, but I want to help. I don't like that. I don't like that people are picking on millennials. And I wanted to make sure that if someone says, you don't know what you're doing, here's what you can do. Here's how you can know what you're doing and keep moving forward. And don't let any of that negative stuff stop you.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
For
my honor. Awesome. I really do feel like it's an honor. I mean, so many people helped me along the way. I mentioned, you know, it was not an easy or a steady journey. I did a lot of tough stuff to get to where I am. And I'm just so grateful for everyone who took time out to provide assistance, to help me through difficult situations. And, you know, it's important to me to lift as you climb. And I hope all of you do that as well. Every single one of you in this room has knowledge or experience that somebody else wishes they had. So it's never too early to start mentoring others and sharing your experience and helping other people grow. So I hope you continue to share with others as well.
Got it. So we're going to open up for questions between you all and the Dory. So for this is your time to like ask the nitty gritty questions. Ask the questions that are really on your mind. Ask the questions that you don't know who to ask anyone else about how you're going to conduct yourself. How do you maybe deal with a millennial that you're working with or managing? And the questions that you might be, you know, apprehensive to ask anyone else.
If you are a millennial.
Even if you are a millennial, sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there are people here who aren't millennials. So you ask your questions too, because I think it's hard to work in the workplace no matter which generation you come from too.
Absolutely.
So does anyone have any questions?
So question I had for you, thank you so much, by the way, on sharing all of this great advice.
My pleasure.
We spoke a little bit about networking and a problem that I've faced, and I'm sure many people face here, is maintaining the relationships and the networks we have. So close relationships from previous employers, all of a sudden it's almost like they're non-existent. And so how do you go about, you talked about Lynette.
Yeah.
And that was a really great opportunity for you, but how do you kind of keep that alive?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you do need to do a little bit. Back in the olden days, back when things happened with Lynette, I mean, we were on internet then, so there was that. But you know, way back before that, you'd really have to keep in touch with people by writing actual letters with stamps and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot easier now. It's really easy to reach out to somebody on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever people are using now to say hello or say I was thinking of you. And one of the kindest things that has happened to me and that I now do with other people is I send a note and say, I saw this, I was thinking of you. And so whether it's paper, somebody ripped out an article from the newspaper and put a Post-it on it and mailed it to me and said, I saw this and thought of you. Somebody else, you know, just forwarded something. It's fine. That's a great way to keep in touch and to make sure you remember each other. And then whenever you travel, if you know people in different places, try to catch up. Whenever I come to San Francisco, try to see Takia. Whenever she comes to New York, she comes and sees me. So those kinds of things are good as well. And it's just such a wonderful investment. And by that, I don't mean an investment in like what I can get out of this relationship later. It's an investment in getting to know another wonderful person. Because over time, the people that drove you crazy at the place where you used to work, they just fade. Like, hopefully they don't come back in your life. And if they do, it's fine. But the people who are really wonderful, those are the ones you really want to hold on to and keep them. And so making the it doesn't even take a whole lot of effort, but making the effort to keep them is important. Yeah, great question. You're welcome.
How did you like come upon millennials as being like your target like group of like kind of like giving advice to and thinking about how they can operate in the workplace? And like, and then also on that, do you think that like the advice, like, do you think like millennials are inherently actually different than like other generations when they were in their 20s and 30s that like in the past? Like, is workplace different? Or are they different as people? So I guess like,
okay,
kind of two
sure.
parts of that.
Yeah, great questions. So I ended up with millennials for two reasons. One is because millennials are the young people now. They're the people in their 20s and early 30s now. And then the other is that, again, I hate bullies, and I want to stick up for the underdog. And so that's what I wanted to focus on. So that's how I ended up with Millennials Guide to Work. The part about whether millennials are different, I keep going back and forth on this. I think there's some ways in which, of course, we're all the same. Everyone's new ones. Everyone needs to figure stuff out. Everyone needs to start somewhere, of course. And you all grew up in a world that's really different from the world I grew up in, and that's radically different from the world baby boomers grew up in. And it's just the connectivity, the speed of information transfer, the volume of information is just so different. And so I see it as, rather than there's something wrong with millennials that they're not fitting into a bigger workplace, I see it as the millennials are the future. You all are already wired, no pun intended, for moving at a much faster speed and doing amazing things in this world. And it just seems like such a terrible injustice if people are saying, no, you're not good enough the way you are, and you've got so much to learn. Okay, yeah, everybody has stuff to learn, but I think millennials are coming in with this amazing set of talents and natural abilities or abilities that you've learned as a result of the kind of world you've grown up in that really give you advantages in the workplace. So I have high hopes for that you will solve all the problems the baby boomers create. No, I'm just kidding. You'll continue to solve the world's problems. I don't want to get it. Generations against each other.
Yeah. I kind of look at it, I don't know how many people either had classmates like this or were that person in class, but like on all of my report cards, it was Takia talks too much and she needs to work on like paying attention in class. And the issue wasn't that I'm like some social butterfly. I wasn't talking because I like to talk to people. I'm an introvert. It's not my jam. But I was so bored. And like, I was like, okay, I'm done with this. Can we move on to the next subject, please? Thanks. Yeah. Okay. And if we can't move on, I get it. I'm going to go do something else.
Right.
And I feel like every teacher who wrote like Takia needs to stop talking in class is reflective of perhaps older generations or generations that don't understand millennials. And I was a millennial in that situation where it's like, it's not that there's a problem with the person. Mm-hmm. There's a problem with the experience that they're having.
Right.
And you have to learn how to adapt if there's space and bandwidth to adapt to like make sure that person has the best environment to thrive in.
Right.
And I find like that's what's going on a lot of the times is that a lot of millennials or a lot of people in the workplace are wanting more or wanting something different. And maybe the manager just doesn't have bandwidth to give it to them, or they just don't have the perception to understand that that's what's going on.
I completely agree with everything you said. And I'd like to highlight that you said an environment where people can thrive. And that's not been a focus for earlier generations. You know, the focus was on, I go to work and I do my job and then that's it. And they're happy that I don't quit. Like that's it. So this idea, I'm very grateful to millennials for ushering this in. A workplace is a place for you to thrive. It's about learning and growing. I think I should have been born a millennial because I'm all about learning and growing and keeping things moving. And if this is too slow, let's speed it up. Let's keep moving forward. And maybe, sometimes maybe I get ahead of myself and I need to go back and pick something else up. But I love working with people who can do that with me, who can pace with me, who can push me to achieve more, to learn more, to do more. That's amazing. That is not the environment baby boomers and Gen Xers grew up in. That's not the work environment that we generally expect to be there. So that's a big difference.
Yeah.
But keep it up. Don't stop. Keep pushing. Keep pushing. Yeah.
We'll do. We'll try.
So kind of going off of what was discussed earlier about the expectation that millennials know everything coming out of the womb. In my experience, I feel that millennials are also expected to know what it is that they want to do at a very young age. So like when you're a teenager, there's an expectation from your parents that you know what you want to do when you grow up.
Yeah.
So then now there's an issue. There's, hello, student loan crisis. You've got people going and taking on loads of student debt, but then they end up going and getting a job that they can't even pay the debt off with, right? So I'm sure that there's multiple people in this room that still might not really know what it is that they want to do when they grow up. Do you have any advice for those people?
Yes. What a great question. And I should say, I'm still not sure what I want to do when I grow up. So I think the best part about all of this is that you can change your careers. Again, this is a big difference for younger generations compared to older generations, especially baby boomers, where my parents worked for the same company for all their lives. They shifted positions a bit, but they retired from that company after 35, 40 years. And that's what everyone did. And we don't have to do that at all. Like nobody has to do that. Nobody ever had to do it. But I think it didn't, the systems weren't in place to facilitate that change before. So yes, there's always questions about how much to invest in student loans. I actually had a whole lot of student loans myself that are thankfully paid off now. But investing in what you want to do, I think it's never a waste to learn. And if you think about any educational program that you're in as not something that's just about the content, so about getting a degree in English or computer programming or whatever, but thinking that it's teaching you how to think, it's teaching you how to learn. And that's valuable no matter where you go. So there's plenty of people who got degrees in law and decided they want to do something other than be a lawyer, or got degrees in tech and decided they wanted to do something else. So I think the challenge is making that transition work in a way that you can manage your finances if you have student loans, and where you can deal with other people's expectations. You don't have to manage their expectations. I mean, certainly if your parents shelled out a bunch of money for you to go to graduate school and now you're going to do something else, you'll have to, you can deal with them, but that's on them. You get to make choices about how you want to move forward in your life. And if you want to completely change your career, that's up to you. Happy to help.
So speaking of helping, I know we have one more question. I'm just going to do a caveat real quick. So I'm all about the how. So if you're in that place where you're like, this is not what I want to do, I think I know what I want to do. You mentioned education, but what are like maybe the first few steps that you take when you're like, okay, this is not what I want to do. I want to try something else. Like, because life is real. You have bills. You have projects that you're currently working on. XYZ, insert blocker.
Absolutely. Yeah. So good way to, so I think of this as we every now and then some of us get this spark that says, I could be doing something better, or I could be doing something different. I could be happier somewhere else. And for most of us, I think of it as a shut it down moment where we freak out and say, how am I going to pay my bills? What will my parents say? What will my friends? Well, all that happens. And then we shut it down. And I encourage you to kind of nurture that thought. Allow yourself to sit through the anxiety of, I know I went to school for a million years and in one topic, and now I want to go save the whales or do whatever. That's okay. Let yourself experience that anxiety. That's the first, is let yourself even put some shape to it and think about what it might be. And the second is do your homework. Figure out what a job in whatever field it is you're interested in might be like. And if you have no idea, that's fine too. I love asking people, tell me about how you got to this job. Did you always want to be a fill in the blank? Whatever, what got you here? What was your path? And it's so amazing to hear people's paths that took them in all these different directions. I was sure in ninth grade that I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then I hit chemistry, and that didn't work so well. So then I was absolutely sure I wanted to be a journalist. And I was, and I loved being a journalist. But after a few years as a journalist, I knew I wanted to be a clinician, a clinical psychologist. And by the time I got done with my PhD, I knew I do not want to be a clinician. But all that information, all the science, all of the psychology, all of the public health, all of the work in organizations, I could never do what I'm doing now without that. So it's just a path. It's a journey. Life is short, but life is also really long. So you can move forward in any way you choose. Once you do your homework, figure out what your options are before you let go of your job, unless you have money to be able to go find yourself, which is totally great if you can do that. Do your homework and then figure out a transition.
Awesome.
Yeah.
there was another question in the back.
Hi, I was just wondering how this book could apply to younger people, let's say Gen Z, I believe. So I'm 30, so not me, and my challenges at work aren't necessarily the same, but just thinking about my younger cousins
Mhm.
or nieces
Mhm.
who are just entering or leaving their collegiate career,
Mhm.
uh, what are the differences between millennials and the younger generation, if you've done any research into that?
Sure, sure. So not a whole lot is yet known about Gen Z. I think that Gen Z will have the social media focus and the tech focus of millennials even more so. But then they're also coming of age. They're teenagers when there's all of these gun shootings and violence and whatever is happening in Washington right now. There's all kinds of uncertainty that is affecting them as they're coming into adulthood. So it remains to be seen exactly what will happen there. As far as the book being helpful for younger people, when I asked people to review the book and to provide some guidance, I think at least half of them said, this is helpful for everybody. So I'm hopeful it's helpful for Gen Z as well. These are common things that everyone looks at. And I've had people in their 60s say, I am so glad to read your book. And this was so helpful for me with this issue I'm having at work. So I'm hopeful that a lot of even though it's targeted at millennials, the issues that are brought up, the challenges that are addressed are pretty universal. Unfortunately, there are always gossips at work. There's always bosses that aren't, doing their thing or doing the thing they should be doing. So I think it'll be widely applicable. Yeah. Thanks for your question.
One of the things I said when I was reviewing was that this should go into like every care package and like graduation gift. So if you have like sisters, brothers, cousins, friends who are graduating, whether from like undergrad or a graduate program, like this is the book that, it goes in when they're like starting to apply for jobs. And then it also goes into every care package when your friend quits their job.
Yes, yes. I just found out that a colleague of mine has proposed it for adoption in the undergraduate kind of welcome to your college career class.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm really
like
excited
freshman
about
intro,
that.
freshman 101,
Yeah.
whatever those classes are
I'm
called.
so excited. Like that's
Yeah.
what I hoped for. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I really hope it can be helpful. And everyone knows college teaches you a whole bunch of stuff, but it doesn't always teach you how to get along in the real world, right? So this is designed to be that link. So I'm really hopeful it can be helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
A lot of the advice that not just millennials, but others are given is really oriented toward a more extroverted personality type. So for those folks who are trying to advocate for themselves, move up the ladder in the workplace or network, do you have any tips for introverts?
Yes, I think there's a couple of chapters specifically for introverts. So one is you can use social media if you're less comfortable face-to-face to get to know people and build relationships. And then another is just starting small. I mean, if for you, it's a big deal to just say hi to a stranger in the hallway every day, start there. That's totally fine. Some of us can just start a conversation with a random stranger on the train. I'm not quite at that point, but I'm generally now comfortable saying hi to complete strangers, and then every now and then I can start a conversation. So kind of push yourself to do that. But there's definitely nothing that says introverts can't be just as successful at work. Introverts can absolutely be just as successful at work and often bring skills and traits that extroverts don't have. And so it's often good to balance that out. So as you move ahead, my next book's coming out in spring, which is Millennials Guide to Management and Leadership. And I hope you can help me with that one too. We'd love to get your feedback. So that one's coming up as well. But looking at surrounding yourself, when you have the option to surround yourself with a team or to hire people, to try to surround yourself with people that build off of your strengths and are in opposite to your weaknesses. So for example, I know I'm really detail oriented with the idea, but getting the stuff done detail oriented is not my thing. So I want to have someone on my team who's going to do that. I also know that I can sometimes come across as too business focused and like, let's get it done. And so I always want to have someone on my team that's always like, so how are your kids and what'd you do this weekend and blah, blah, blah. So somebody like that always kind of, it softens me. It balances me out in a way because I'm not a jerk. I just don't think of those kinds of things all the time. And so being able to build from the strengths of your colleagues is so important. Yeah.
And I will also say that in my organization, we've tried to develop programming. So look for programming that your organization provides that kind of helps ease that transition. So for instance, we have a lead sync where it might be really hard for you to like try to schedule one-on-ones with the leads because it's intimidating for people. But we created a program that allows people to come to a lead sync in a group setting so you can kind of break the ice. So like look for programming and stuff that kind of facilitates your weaknesses or your strengths. I think being an introvert is actually a strength, but yeah.
So just now you were talking a little bit about you yourself decide how people want to see you as. It's like, being a newbie, or it's like you're being an experienced person already. So I think as a millennial, sometimes we get get punched in the face where like you have a bloated self-perception. Like how do you develop the self-awareness where, okay, I feel like I know something, but then a lot of times it's like you work on a project and you feel like, oh no, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah. So one is, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. You can control how you see yourself, and that will affect how other people see you, but you definitely can't control how people see you. So you can control in the way you dress, you can put off something, but other people, if they want to think that everyone under 30 is naive, they're going to think that way, and you can't really do a whole lot about that. One of the things I see a lot with young people, and I also saw a lot in myself when I was making all kinds of mistakes all over the place, is to think about when to ask questions and when to not ask questions. Sometimes, if you're in a meeting with your colleagues and your boss, generally should be an okay time to ask questions. But if you're in a meeting, I was in a meeting recently with a young person who was working in the group. She had been pulled into a meeting, and her boss was there, and her boss's boss, and her boss's boss's boss. And she was asking really kind of basic questions there. And I thought, ooh, don't just keep quiet for a minute. I never want to tell people not to speak up, but at the same time, there's often a time or a place for getting the background information and getting the other information there. And what she was doing, I get it. I understand why she was doing it. I support her. At the same time, it wasn't serving her well to ask all of those questions in such a high-level meeting. And it might have served her well to just observe what was happening and then go back and ask questions later to kind of fill in the gaps of what she didn't know. That would have served her better, I think.
Hi, my question is, what is a healthy definition or a healthy pursuit of meaningful work? So I think I was thinking a lot about what you said, previous generations, like they're fine with working 60 years at one company. And whereas our generation, we're looking for more meaningful work. But I find that in my career, I feel like there's drawbacks to always pursuing or always trying to find that like sweet spot in my career, because I feel like there's just dissatisfaction with the present. There's like this urgency that creates more anxiety, as well as even just for the organization. There's just so much employee turnover in the Silicon Valley. Like people stay at their jobs 1 to 2 years. Whereas I feel like sometimes if you stay committed to one job, like you might be able to learn more. So I think it's just been hard for me to learn how to be patient with the process. So like, what are some recommendations you have for like creating that healthy balance?
Right. Great question. So I know a lot of people are told, do what you love. And I think that is incomplete advice. So what I suggest, because I'm a super nerd, Venn diagram here of do what you love, what you're good at, those two things need to overlap, and what people will pay you to do, right? So for example, I'm good at typing and people will pay me to type. I don't hate typing, but that's not going to be my career, typing. I don't want to do that for a lifetime. And there may be things that I really love, like marine biology, that I'm just not that good at. I mean, I get that. It's sad to say it's not my thing, but there are other ways I can do marine biology type of stuff without it being my career. And so really trying to search for that place where those three things overlap. And remember, life is long. Life is long. If you keep moving toward your goals, it will become clear. And if you don't know exactly where you're moving toward, that's okay too. Just keep moving. Keep moving forward. Keep trying to learn. Start asking people questions about what they're doing and what they like to do. It's not an ends game where, today I'm the CEO of this company and that's my goal. And now I'm done. Kind of like when I was a teenager and I thought, well, by the time I'm 30, I'm sure I'm going to have everything figured out because grown-ups really know what they're doing. Yeah. Totally not true. But it's always a journey. And when I get to one goal, there's always a moment of what am I going to do now? And kind of letting myself be patient with that adjustment and pushing myself to set a new goal, set a higher set a higher goal, think big, and then think even bigger. And you can keep learning and growing till you're dead. It's a good way to go. Yeah.
Do you mind if I add to that?
Sure.
I would also say that like part of just growing up, right, is knowing yourself and learning yourself. And that feeling of like anxiety and nerve is an indicator of something. And so like you have to know when that's an indicator of I'm too comfortable, I need to move on, or this really isn't the time for me to be considering moving. And so like take time. I think you said this earlier, but like sit in that feeling and figure out why you're feeling that way. Is it really an indicator like, you know what, it's not my time to move on and I'm going to stay here? Or is it I'm just uncomfortable and I need to plan my whatever my next move is going to be? So like allow yourself to feel your feelings for a little bit before you like action them.
Yeah. A great question to ask, and this has served me so well over and over again, is when I talk to someone who has information or that may know stuff I don't, to say, I'm just starting to think about what else might be out there. So I'm not saying I want to leave. I have plausible deniability if it gets back to my boss, but I'm just starting to think about what those next steps might be. What else is out there? And usually people respond and say, oh, what are you interested in? Well, there's this and there's this and there's this.
Talk it out.
Yeah. And then you can start working through your own anxiety, and you can talk with someone else about kind of concrete opportunities that can also potentially work out. And I'll tell my story when I said this. So when I left my first faculty position, I really wanted to, I was so nervous because I thought I was going to stay at this place forever and it was comfortable and it was good. And then it wasn't. So I went to this meeting and promised myself, I'm just going to say to one person, I'm just starting to think about what else might be out there. And I went through the whole 2-day meeting and I hadn't said it. And then finally at the end, I'm like, oh, crap, I need to say it to somebody. So the next person who walks up, I'm going to say it. And so someone said, oh, hey, I saw that you said this thing in the meeting. And I said, I'm just starting to think about what else might be out there. It was so awkward. And she was so kind. And she said, do you have time for lunch? And so we sat down to lunch and she's like, so tell me what you've been doing. And I told her, and tell me what you're looking for. I'm not sure what I'm looking for. You know, I think I want to work in a bigger place. I think I want to work with this, but honestly, I'm not sure. She said, well, I know someone who just started at Columbia University and she is working in your area. I know her really well. She's super nice. Why don't you call her and ask, you know, what she's doing, and maybe there's an opportunity there. 6 months later, I was at Columbia. It took me a week. I should not cut to the chase. It makes it sound so easy. So she told me this, and then all the way home, I was like, oh my God. And then I get home and it takes me a week to email her. She writes back within 10 minutes, can you send me your CV and do you have time to talk? And then I'm like, oh my God. So I sent her my CV and we had a conversation. She said, I'm looking to bring people onto my team. Any possibility you can come out to New York and talk? And I'm at work, like, okay, yes, sure. So I did. And, you know, your results may vary. I don't always get, you know, first time I say something to somebody, you might not either, but I've learned so much, because everyone here has so much great information to share. And once you start asking them about it, people love talking about themselves. They love talking about their experiences and what they know, and share it with each other. Everyone can be better off.
I said, sure. I was trying to figure out my question.
2 questions.
It's kind of like a long question.
Okay.
So it was kind of a follow-up from his question around kind of perception and optics.
Yeah.
Like for millennials and sort of like how to combat that. Like a lot of, I think, older employees might think that millennials might be addicted to their phones or social media. Yeah. And so personally for me, I've been contemplating, okay, should I delete, you know, Instagram or Facebook? Because I'm so tired of stigma and like judgment of what I put out there. And so I've been battling with that internally quite a bit. I don't know if other folks here have too, but how would you go about, it's almost like what you've put in the world is too late already. You get what I'm saying?
I think so. I think there's a couple things that could be helpful. And part of what's helpful is putting yourself in the mindset of whoever's opinion you're thinking about. So if you're thinking about maybe older bosses who are older than you, who are maybe Gen X or baby boomers, what do they value? And then how can you do that? So I know for me, if I'm working with someone who, I don't care who they are, if they're on their phone at work when they're supposed to be working, like that's a problem, but I don't care what they post on their Instagram. That doesn't matter. I think you can do, if you show up on time, prepared, you contribute, you ask meaningful questions, you're not a jerk, that puts you way ahead of a lot of people, sad to say. Yeah, I mean, that's just basic stuff. And I've had people of different ages, but more, I think more younger people than older people say like, why do I have to be here at 9? And, you know, what does this make, like complain about stuff like that, that I'm just thinking, that's not a good use of your points here. Like, don't waste points on something like that. But just doing those basic things will help you be seen differently, dressing differently. I made a big change when I went to the associate vice president position and started wearing suits, because it was an organization that where people of that rank, I noticed when I was interviewing, tended to wear suits. And so I did, and I found a way to wear suits that didn't feel like I was selling myself out. And then over time, I just kind of relaxed and it didn't matter anymore and I didn't care. And women, I think, get a little more flexibility on clothing, but clothing and how you appear and how you present yourself. It's not a matter of turning yourself into the kind of person you think they want you to be. That's not what I'm advocating at all. But I think there is a way that you can find a way to present to others in a way that feels authentic within yourself. You're not selling out, not suggesting that feels authentic, and you can still be like way ahead of the game by just doing some of those basic things too.
Yeah. I think you mentioned two things that at Google are pretty like flexible, which is like how you dress and what time you come in.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's important also to like understand the culture and the context is like the bigger idea is like where your workplace is, what are the values that are there, and see if those values can align with like how you conduct yourself. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But anyone who can, I teach a bit about developing leadership in public health, and I would say it's valid for any field, how you can develop leadership, thinking about if you're always a person in the meeting who's paying attention, prepared, and trying to help reach a solution. That's huge, because I'm sure you're in meetings a lot. Not everybody does that. And if you are actually trying to move things forward, you see that things are going off in a tangent and you can help kind of pull it back, that's amazing. And anybody would appreciate that. Yeah. And that's not that hard. That's really simple. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time for questions, but I do want to thank you for coming. Thank you for this amazing book. It was great to read. I encourage everyone to get it and read it. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. My honor.